As the world lay splintered and high kingdoms fall, I pray to remember the reach of your call. What you give to see, the beautiful, the broken, the treasured remains of what was once spoken. And when I am cut by the fragments of fear, the edges of darkness, the dull end of dread, please God remind me that I am also a part of the blood of rhyme shards that you hold in the dark. From General Pharaoh of the Holocron God Creed. The year is 2184 AD and 100 years of earthquakes have devastated the planet. Little evidence remains of the world that once was. All we have left is in the sky, Holocron City. The last city on Earth suspended a mile above the Atlantic Ocean by way of an advanced magnetic technology known as ferrotech. Upon its discovery, mankind stood on the brink of the unimaginable, a technology that granted precise control over the bond, movement, and distance between ferromagnetic objects built into every facet of our city's infrastructure. The key to controlling ferrotech was lost, however, in a tragic accident that nearly destroyed all that we'd built. It was called the anomaly, a perfect storm of magnetic variables that split the city in two. The one behind the anomaly has evaded capture for nearly 10 years. The past, however, is often much harder to escape, no matter how far you run. In the hanging ruins, four friends are making their way through the wasteland on their daily scavenger run. However, one of them, Ty, wants to take things down a bit more adventurous route and venture into a cave in hopes of finding something big. But the other three took a bit of convincing, stating that one of these days, Ty's luck is going to run out and they hope to be there to see it. As they made their way through the cave, we are given a brief introduction by Ty on just who this band of scavengers are. There's Jax, the tech genius, Dump, the muscle, Wade, the strategist, and Ty himself, the dashing daredevil, who continues to do his best to convince his friends on why such a risky adventure will be worth it. As they venture through the cave, they come across a skeleton of a Holocron Guardian, rejoicing that they're going to be rich when they turn in the Guardian's Holocron ring. But while discussing the possibilities of being the richest scavengers in the whole camp, when they turn in the Holocron ring, they are swarmed by bees, leading to them bolting it out of the cave as fast as they could back to the camp. When they get back to the camp, at the check-in, they notice that Miss Pepper is on the scanner today and they formulate a plan to smooth talk their way past her, which each of the four called a different aspect of her that they were going to compliment, though it only brought much annoyance to Miss Pepper as she checked in their salvage and made the appropriate decreases to their debts. However, when it was Wade's turn, who only had 1 day left, instead of his debt being decreased, he unfairly had 2 years added back to it, with Miss Pepper stating that she would love to take credit for it, but the order to increase Wade's debt came straight from the warden, also telling the boys good luck smooth talking him. And Ty becomes furious at the injustice his friend just experienced and plans to do something about it. But the rest understand why it happened, as Wade is the best scavenger in the ruins, so the warden just wasn't going to let him go. But before Ty could have continued to vent his frustration, they noticed that the Holocron ring in his backpack turned on with the message Anomaly Threat Level Delta Proximity 0, with each of them giving their best guess on what it meant, until Wade came to the realization that the ring is what the Holocron guards used to stop the anomaly, as it was built to find them. So with a little creative hacking, it should point them to any source of magnetic disturbance, which means they can use it to find the one who caused the anomaly and potentially cash in the big bounty that will be enough to pay off all their debts 3 times over, making a plan to head out first thing in the morning and put the ring to use. Later that night, Ty is having a nightmare of his younger self on the run in Holocron City with the ring in his hands as they pulsate with energy, playing the same message as it did earlier. However, he corners himself with the figure chasing him, telling Ty, "Dear boy, you need not concern yourself with what you saw back there." Ty apologizes, saying, "I didn't mean to, I just wanted to help." But as the figure comes closer, reaching out to Ty for the ring, Ty screams no, dispelling the energy from his hands onto the wall of the city, causing the anomaly that almost destroyed the entire city. Waking up out of his sleep screaming, no, they won't understand, I've got to go. And with that, let's put the Way of Yahweh Ty Part 1 on our Christian fiction judgment scale. For story direction and concept, with writing credits to Jason H. Tucker, Andy Rugg, and Robert Ramos, with Shanna Murph as the editor, this series is off to a solid 4 out of 5 start on our scale, with me having no doubt it might punch its way into one of my top 10s of the year, even though we are 3 months into the year. Because the way I gasped when I realized that Ty was the anomaly all along was on the level of seeing the cherubim emerging out of the portal give a warning. The warning was not heeded, so it turned the cult leader into a pile of ash in Black Blossom issue 5 by Evan David. It was just... it evoked that same emotion, and when I saw that back then, I was like, that short circuited my brain for a good while after seeing that. And I felt that same emotion when I read that part that I haven't gotten that like wow factor punch from the comics we've covered in like a while. Even some of the stuff that I've given a 5 out of 5 to last year. It's shy of a 5 out of 5 because this is one of those comics where you need to read it twice to really make sense and appreciate a lot of the conversations between the characters, mainly because of the delivery format that they have for the comic, which I'll explain in detail in the art section of the review. When it comes to dialogue, it's also a 4 out of 5. I didn't cover every line in my summarization, but the banter between the boys there are just some gems in there. Like, there was a moment in the cave when Ty asked them what is something they had in the city that they don't in the ruins, and Dump, Wade, and Jax in unison shouted girls, along with Wade taking multiple puffs of the inhaler, overpowering the song of the bee swarm coming towards them. All of that was honestly amazing, as it had a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to the dialogue, which was the comic's biggest strength for me, but made its biggest weakness plague even more, which is the artwork and creativity, and more so delivery structure, which I must put forward, their site is amazing. This comic review, which I must disclose also, was sent to me by the creator as a request, and is the only request I have gotten that was not a here is my PDF, but here is a link to our interactive comic book site where the art and speech bubbles float in and out of the screen as you click next. That's awesome. But this delivery plus the art style makes appreciating and understanding the story and dialogue on your first read through very guesswork and hard to follow their conversations and a lot of story elements, since it's mainly silhouetted figures of the characters and speech bubbles that pop in and out, with a lot of the bubbles in the cave pointing off of the screen. So if it's your first time reading through, you might be reading the dialogue thinking it's someone else. If the person's name is not directly stated on that they're referring to someone else after it was said, even in cases like that, you have to read the dialogue a second time around. Well, I read the entire comic a second time around to really appreciate the back and forth and the banter between the characters, because the dialogue was great, but the delivery was as if it was meant to be voice acted for a cartoon, which I honestly do believe it will work well as a cartoon, and I do look forward to one day seeing it as a cartoon. But since this is a comic, and unless I'm just a bit slow, you are most likely going to be a bit lost on your first reading, to the point that I honestly believe you can only appreciate what they did, especially in the cave section, on your second reading. And this very well might be the intention, though not the confusion aspects of it, as I haven't mentioned it up to now. But after you get to the end of part 1, which is free, you get access to the branching story options, which allow you to change what the boys was chased by out of the cave and actually make different choices as to how part 2 of the story will play out once you have the guild pass, which we will be covering in our next review. The art style standalone is a 3 out of 5 on our scale when compared to other comics we covered, but the tech will elevate that to a 5 out of 5, as though this section is named artwork and creativity. Creativity on our review scale is weighed much higher and can override the artwork for us personally, because you could have a really great artwork, but if your artwork just looks like a copy and paste of a Marvel character that you slap a cross on, that's not really creative. Versus you could have not so amazing artwork, but if the story that you're portraying and the delivery of your delivery of the story and stuff is top tier, then I usually override that to a 5 out of 5 if it's like really good. And this was up there, but with all that was discussed on the delivery aspect of the tech, it gets a 4 out of 5. But if you guys think I should separate artwork and creativity again, like I did at the beginning of this year for our story section throughout 2023 and 2024, was included story and dialogue, but now we split it in half, where story is one thing, story direction and concept is one thing, and dialogue is another. Do let me know if that would make more sense in future reviews for the judgment scale, to have artwork as one thing and creativity as another thing on a scale. When it comes to theological basis, which refers to how well Christian principles are adapted in a piece of fictional work, it's a 0 out of 0. Even though the series name is The Way of Yahweh and it started with a quote of a prayer, and I think I can smell the theological application of the injustice that Wade experienced with his debt being increased, those aren't enough to spike the theological basis section of the graph, as I need to see direct theological claims in the story, even if it's allegorically being made. It has to be like a clear like biblical reference or biblical-esque event in the story. That's why some issues of the Remnant, when we review it, though the Remnant is literally about heroes appointed to stop the premature rise of the Antichrist, some of the stories are just day in the life of the superhero with no serious theological reference in there. So I apply the same concept to this first issue. So lastly, my recommendation against the volume of gospel-infused comics we have covered, it gets a 5 out of 5, especially since it's free on the site, and I do think it's definitely worth the double rate to really appreciate the story. But you will need to join the Group Law Guild for the other installments of the series, which we will be covering in the coming months. So overall, The Way of Yahweh Ty Part 1 gets a 4.25 out of 5 from the Xplanations. The link to the Group Law site to read it for yourself, as I did skip a lot of the dialogue in my summary section, can be found at the top right hand corner of your screen and in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, then why not consider leaving a like on it and subscribing for more reviews and coverage of comics made by professing believers. If you enjoyed the video to the point you want to check out another one on the channel, then be sure to click the card at the top right hand corner of your screen to check out our other Group Law related reviews, or you can check out this video that YouTube is recommending to take you down our gospel infused comic reviews corner of the internet.